All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you. It is so good to be back on a Monday. Wherever you are, however you are, thank you for joining us. Kim is here. You can see her.
Kim, how are you?
We're all playing hurt. I don't have time to even ask what's wrong today with Kim. How is your health today?
I'm feeling a lot better. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I am actually still not great, but I am also thanking you for asking. I feel kind of like I did on Friday. But anyway, it adds a little thank you. I hope Mark and Kim feel better, Julie as well. Thank you all. There's an added drama sort of to watching the shows over the next couple of days because I could pass out at any moment, and it's kind of a cool thing. You know.
Are we taking bets? Are there odds? No?
I don't know. Well, we can ask Mr. Predicto. Hang on a second. Let's ask Mr. Predicto quickly before we get the show started. Mr. Predicto, will I pass out on today's show?
The answer is yes.
Oh my God, this is exciting. Who knows when it's going to happen? We have 2 hours to try to make it happen. Wow. This is a live 2-hour presentation coming to you from California. We are all over California with news of the COVID surge. What's going on in the stock markets? I've seen blame put on Biden-Harris. Okay. Says Jay Gar for a $5 super chat.
Big shout out.
The markets are way off today. Way off. Rough end of the week, rough start of the week. You saw in Japan, the Nikkei was way down overnight, and then you knew, in a sense, or thought at least a significant possibility, that the American markets would also open much, much lower, and that's exactly what has happened. So, Albert, take me to some authorities. Albert is here, by the way, in place of Tony. Those of you who keep playbooks on the show, Tony's a Monday, Tuesday guy.
Albert, thank you.
And Albert is a Wednesday through Friday guy. But this week, Albert is in today. And I believe, Albert, it's your birthday soon, isn't it?
Yeah, not today, but soon, sometime this week. And I will be on the show on one of those days.
Oh, that's great. I love that. All right. In any case, let's get back to the markets quickly because there's a huge sell-off. Let's see what's behind it. Albert has a piece for us from CNN. Look at stop. Look at the colors that they are wearing on CNN.
It's never been anything like this.
If Willy Wonka had a stock market update, this would be the coloring that everybody would have. It's quite impressive. The lime green jacket and the bright pink jacket.
Always a critic, you know?
I'm not.
The image is hideous.
Yeah, let's go ahead and run it.
News today, at least so far. We'll see how the markets open, and we'll get that pulled up just as soon as
Let's pull up the big board so we can see where things are right now, actually, because it's ugly.
There it is.
So we're still off, about 1,000 points for the Dow. So this is a continuation, and we'll see how the S&P and the tech-heavy NASDAQ are opening. I imagine probably not good, but this is a continuation from Friday, right? It's the new week, same old concerns that plagued the session on Friday. So on the one hand, you have that jobs report that came out, obviously weaker than expected, and you have some who say, it's one jobs report. It's one data point. That does not necessarily make a trend. On the other, and this is where the market appears to be, there is a growing feeling that the weakening that we have already seen in the labor market is intensifying, but also maybe the Fed dropped the ball. Maybe they waited too long. We can actually pull up for you where the Fed funds rate has been. And you can see it's been in that 5% range for quite some time. Sort of adding to these concerns that maybe the Fed did too much. This is the unemployment rate, which we saw obviously jump in last Friday's report as well. But it's sort of adding to these concerns that perhaps the Fed has done too much. Perhaps the interest rates are too restrictive, and you're seeing that sort of in consumer spending, that being the concern. So the question now is, what does the Fed do? What do we do with this? I talked to Mark Zandi, the chief economist of Moody's, a short time ago. I asked him the same question, and this is what he told me. He said, the Fed needs to start moving. If they don't, we are going to have a problem. The economy is sputtering, and it's going to stall out. recession feels much more likely. So the clear message is the Fed's got to move.
Let's put up again so we can see where things are. That's the Dow.
Yeah.
More than 1,000 points, a big, round, ugly number. I think in percentage terms, the NASDAQ even uglier right now, the tech-heavy NASDAQ. And in Japan overnight, they had record down day, more than 10%, driven largely by tech right there.
So that's kind of a little bit at the end there, a repeat of what I had mentioned to you. But the important thing to know is that, and it's no surprise, there is pressure on the Fed now to lower rates because that generally will be accompanied by a market rise. That is typically not something the Feds respond to, but it's nonetheless something that I'm not panicking. Some of the losses have bounced back, but you don't want it to lag too long, says Rex Smith. Yes, thank you for the super chat. I think it's a good point. I mean, it could be a buying opportunity. This could be your big chance to get rich, Kim. You jump in, you buy it on the dip.
Oh, yeah.
Gail Guthrie says, OMG, we're all doomed. Yes, there you go. Well, we are all doomed, but I doubt the market has much to do with that. We will watch it for you. The sell-off is essentially baking in a bunch of stuff on domestic economic policy, I'd suggest, but it's true that for a while now, people have felt that the Fed has been a bit too restrictive with the rates as high as they are. I mean, obviously, it's limited inflation, but it's also limited a lot of other stuff. And in as much as that's the case, it's been an amazing ride. I mean, let's face it, the stock market has taken a huge ride, but now that ride appears to be over. Market is leveling out, says Paul Young. Well, there you have it. So, Albert, I'm charging you with keeping an eye on this and try to, if you would please, keep us posted throughout the day. Can you do that, sir?
I will have a tab open.
Very good. Thank you.
Albert, thank you.
All right. William Lundgren hanging on tight to my Krugerrand. Anybody remember Krugerrands? Krugerrands were the gold coin of I believe, South Africa. Wasn't that right?
Google it.
I'm pretty sure that that's right. And everybody was buying Krugerrands for a time. There's like a mad-ass hype around Krugerrands for a while in this country. Anyway, that's what that's about. Meantime, California COVID surge is real. You know, Courtney and I both have COVID. I have it right now as I speak to you. I know what you're thinking. Mark, no one wears COVID as well as you do. I know. I was on the verge of passing out, and I still looked great, if I can just say that. Yeah.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
So, again, though, COVID is brutal, man. I'll tell you for real. It's been a rough couple of days. But it's surprisingly stronger, this surge, and longer lasting than experts had originally expected. It's proven to be enduring in ways that most of the doctors who watch these infectious subvariants didn't expect. So there are a ton of these related subvariants. The flirt subvariant is really a collection of a bunch of other subvariants, meaning they call it flirt, but apparently it's like a bag of subvariants, if you will, to COVID-19. And instead of naming them all, they just call it flirt. They refer to them collectively as that. The KP311 of all of them within flirt seems to be the most adept at transmission, says Dr. Peter Chin Hong, who is a guest and a friend of the show.
I love him.
And if the one people will continue to take over, he thinks it's the one that's going to continue to take over, not only in the U.S., but around the world. So that'll be the dominant strain, is Dr. Peter Chin Hong's view. This particular surge, he says, is fairly robust and long-lasting, lasting a little longer than I thought it would. It's certainly very different from last summer. California is one of 43 states, as well as the District of Columbia, with, quote, high or very high coronavirus levels in wastewater. It's here, and it's tough. And I've got it right now, and it has kicked my ass for a couple of days. I can't say it enough. Be careful, but there's only so much you can do. Courtney and I both got it, and I'm glad in a way that we both got it at the same time, I would have preferred, to be honest, which I always like to be with you, that she got it and then I never got it. You know what I mean? That would be the very best scenario. Yeah, I'm just being honest. That's just the one I would, yeah. But if it couldn't be that way, then I prefer that neither one of us get it. And then my third choice would be that I get it and she doesn't. But that's really, there's not, I don't have much around that. Anyway, we both have it, so that's
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kamala Harris is still looking for her number 2. She has reset the electoral map, that Kamala Harris. Pretty amazing. Biden drops out. Harris becomes the likely Democratic nominee and has reset the electoral map in 2 weeks' time. Well, it's even though it's only been 2 weeks, they're actually looking at 7 key swing states. This is a bit different, and we're going to talk to Gary Dietrich, bottom of the hour, about just this. I'll also mention, just because I mentioned Gary coming up, I'll tell you that's also coming up, True Crime Corner. Courtney has a guest today. We're very excited about that. Someone who has a connection to the victim in all of the in this story, and Karen Dawn is here with a word about animals. So I'm going to really save a little bit of this, except to say, and this is important, that it appears with Harris's uptick. Now, look, this is still a dead heat. And the electoral map, as you know, favors the GOP candidate always. But the latest would suggest that there are additional ways and additional states that might be in play. That was not the case when Joe Biden was the nominee. The Democratic base is coming home in states that we know that are evenly divided and have been very, very close for the last few elections. They kind of snap back to being very, very competitive and will be the focus of the 2024 campaign. That's from Amy Walter, who's from the Cook Political Report. Although Trump's paths to victory were expanding in late June and early July, the race is now contracting back to the original 6 or 7 battleground states. Trump and Harris are now in a virtual tie. Trump at 46.5% support, Harris at 46.2% support. That's the Washington Post average of national polls. So all the trends favor what will be, again, an extremely close race within the margin of error, but Harris is obviously putting on much more of a show than was Biden. Biden was putting on, I don't know what he was putting on, but it was pretty, it was weak. It was weak. Meantime, there is real, shall we say, turmoil within the Trump organization. Here's what's happening. Trump White House aides, those are the people who served with Trump during his administration. I guess this should be a chunk of Trump, come to think of it, shouldn't it, Albert? Do I double back now and do chunk of Trump, or do I just continue? Kim, what do you think?
I think you just carry forward.
I think I just carry forward, yeah. But Albert, I do blame you for not realizing that this is chunk of Trump and somehow telling me.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the people who had served with Donald Trump formerly in his last administration, they are now coming forward in pretty healthy numbers for Kamala Harris. It's a Republicans for Harris drive. And dozens of well-known Republicans, including a couple of these former Trump White House staffers, have switched allegiance to endorse Harris. This is the latest blow to Trump, who's apparently very angry and looking at making changes potentially within his campaign. They launched a Republican for Harris drive just yesterday. They've already had public endorsement of almost 30 Republican moderates who reject the chaos, division, and violence of Donald Trump and his Project 2025 agenda. That's a quote. They include former Trump White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham, Olivia Troy, who advised Vice President Mike Pence on national security. I might not agree with Vice President Kamala Harris on everything, but I know that she will fight for our freedom, protect our democracy, and represent America with honor and dignity on the world stage, said Stephanie Grisham. Again, she was the White House press secretary.
The thinking is that if other Republicans hear from Republicans why they're switching, that the message is more likely to be well received, which I think is an interesting concept, and one the new Harris for Republicans group is really kind of digging into. You know, if people hear it from us, if people from our own party, Republican Party, hear it from us, then they're more likely to climb on board.
Yeah, to feel comfortable making that move. It does make sense in a way. I mean, it flies in the face of some history, because you'll remember there were full-page ads in the New York Times signed by, 150 retired generals saying Trump isn't fit for office. There have been a ton of these collective declarations that Trump is dangerous and a chaotic force and belongs nowhere near a decision-making post. And it really hasn't done much in the past. But now, with the momentum changing, we might be reaching a tipping point where this kind of stuff actually may make a difference in the result of the election.
Yeah.
The old feud between Republicans and Donald Trump is kicked back up in Georgia. He was down there on the weekend, and during his weekend there, he opened up a tirade on Brian Kemp. Now, here's the deal on Brian Kemp. He's a Republican governor, of course, in Georgia. In my view, he stole an election from Stacey Abrams, and that's what they do in Georgia. They steal elections down there. They do it by disenfranchising voters. Abrams, you Google this. Google everything I'm saying to you, and it will be corroborated.
Google it.
The registrations that Abrams brought were in the hundreds of thousands, I think. There was a substantial number of registrants and new voters that Stacey Abrams brought forward. It was all legit. It was all kosher. And they found a way, the Republican machine, to disenfranchise those voters. Why is the U.S. voting public so dumb, says Spencer Jaffe? Well, I mean,
There's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
Yeah. And Jim says, hopefully Albert will not get COVID for his birthday. Yeah,
oh, no.
That is
big shout out.
That is something we all hope. I hope nobody gets COVID at all for anything. But so Brian Kemp is not a good guy. But Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, is an effective governor from the standpoint of the way he's viewed by Georgians. In other words, he's fairly popular. So it's an odd target for Donald Trump to take on, because he's a popular Republican in a state that you likely will carry and is on your side. And they're still in the business, is the state of Georgia, and they're still in the business, are the GOP machine members in Georgia, of disenfranchising voters. It's what they do in Georgia. They throw people off the voter rolls. So they find any number of reasons. Again, Google it and you'll see. But this is really a story about how Trump is going after Brian Kemp, and he's going to need Kemp. It's the weirdest. You'd really see in Trump biting the hand that feeds him. He said he's a bad guy, he's a disloyal guy, and he's a very average governor. And, of course, he got boos toward Kemp from his crowd. And he was at Georgia State University, and he's really escalated his criticism of Kemp to a point where it's hard to ignore it. But, again, attacking a popular governor of a pivotal state is really not smart. But Trump is doing his Trump thing. Albert, I gave you a piece of video. What is it? A couple pieces of video from this morning?
I have one on some of the polling that you were talking about, and also one on what just Trump at the rally.
So give me the Trump at the rally stuff first, if you will, and then I'll get to the polling, okay? This is a little bit of Trump at the rally. This give you a feel for what happened over the weekend. Here we go. This is the rally I was talking about.
Ultra left, you know that.
He's talking about Kamala Harris.
A week ago, lots of empty seats. But the crowd she got was because she had entertainers. The school administration stopped us from getting another 500, 600, even 1,000 people in.
He's concerned that people don't think he doesn't have big crowds anymore. That's what he's talking about there.
If they're going to stand in the way of admitting people to our rally, just imagine what they're going to do on Election Day. They got thousands of people, they won't let them in. A Harris presidency, you know why? because they don't want to show that we're successful. That's all it is.
He sounds drunk.
They don't want to show. She has to go get.
He does sound medicated or something, doesn't he?
Like slurring his words. He sounds drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, now you don't have an A and B comparison to Biden to help you anymore. You always had, Grandpa Joe who sounded slow and, enfeebled. But now you don't have that. Now it's just you out there, riffing and making stuff up. And as Kim says, sounding a bit like you're dipping into incoherence.
A little too much rum in that Diet Coke there.
It is. Now, he's a non-drinker, so we know that's not that. Rod Stewart is mocking Donald Trump because, I don't know why Rod Stewart felt the need to step forward, but he did. He made jokes during a Las Vegas performance. Anybody want to guess how old Rod Stewart is, by the way? What would you guess?
72,
Rod Stewart.
maybe?
70, you said?
72.
72. Albert, do you know who Rod Stewart is?
Of course, yes.
Albert, thank you.
Do you know who Rod Stewart is? I do have the answers, though.
Okay, so look, let's put some guesses up there. Mindy says 80, Nancy says 76, 75 says Knit One, Pearl One. How old is rocker Rod Stewart? Jim Galinsky says 78. All of these are good but not correct. Manuel Martinez, 84. 74 says the V woman. Vilma, my girlfriend Vilma. Michael Bravo says 83. What a great name Michael Bravo is, if that's your real name. I love that. Michael D says 80. No one has guessed it yet. How old is rocker Rod Stewart? 79. Thank you very much, Sally and Callie. The 79-year-old singer, who recently flew a Ukrainian flag in Germany to a mixed reception, is on tour in the U.S. He has a string of shows at the Coliseum in Las Vegas. While performing on stage, he abruptly stopped the gig in front of thousands of fans to show a meme on the huge screen behind him. The image was a tweet with various images of Donald Trump through the years, with his skin color gradually deepening from a paler shade before morphing into like a tangerine hue. And the caption to that image made reference to Trump's comments about fellow U.S. presidential candidate Kamala Harris, when the Republican presidential candidate said that he was not aware Harris was black, and, all of a sudden she made a turn, she became black. Yeah. So Stewart projected this image onto the screen and said, I didn't know he was orange until a number of years ago when he happened to turn orange. A little bit of trolling. He reposted the tweet, 1.4 million followers on Instagram. So you can see these Trump getting some blowback, both in a fun way and in a kind of more serious way. We'll talk to Gary Dietrich about the future in the short term and also in the full months ahead, as the race is compacted a bit, but 3 months is a long time. It's both not a lot of time and a lot of time, meaning stuff can happen that can really shake a race up. This is clearly a dead heat race. So the last thing I would point to is Elon Musk and Elon Musk's new strategy to help Donald Trump. Of course, he has the super PAC, which is getting a lot of contributions for Donald Trump. But the other thing that is happening with Elon Musk and that super PAC is when you make a contribution to it, to the Trump campaign, the information you're putting in there, that's data that is then used by Musk. So he's collecting scores of personal information under the guise of inviting people to register to vote as part of the effort to boost Trump and his presidential campaign. Earlier this month, apparently, Musk denied reports that he would be donating the $45 million a month that was originally reported. Let me see what this is. Little known fact, it takes Krugerrands and a great Trump joke to buy into Mark's poker game, which is, that's not far from the truth. Thank you, Gregory. Yeah. And thank you for the $5.
Big shout out.
Yeah. I've never seen, I haven't seen a Krugerrand in a while. The point, though, back to the story, is that he's not going to be now donating the $45 million. Instead, he's set up this PAC. This is a super PAC. It's a new one. It's called America PAC. I told you about it last week. But the PAC is like a door-to-door canvassing operation that allows it to work in direct coordination with the Trump campaign. And this allows Musk and other Silicon Valley donors to essentially put their money right into the presidential race on Trump's behalf. The America PAC, again, this is Elon Musk's new PAC he set up for Trump. Musk PAC under investigation in Michigan. Thank you, Maud. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, listen to what they want to do, because this really is a violation of privacy. They've launched a series of digital ads. They're using the image of Trump's assassination to invite people who are browsing on Google to register to vote. Seems innocent enough. In states where the outcome is certain, like California, the ads actually do direct them to a voter registration site. But in key battleground states, people are directed to a very different page. It prompts them to enter their phone number, address, and age. And once they've done that, they get a thank you with no actual link to a voter registration site. They poured $800,000 Musk has into digital advertisement. When I say Musk, I mean that America PAC that he set up. $800K into digital advertisements to target voters in key battleground states. So they're in Arizona and Michigan and Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And the information collected from user responses to the ad will inform their canvassing efforts in those states. They'll know where to go, where they should be. So this is not just about money. It's about turning out specific voters in very tight races. The investigation, though, in Michigan, that could really put a halt to things, or at least I would think put a pause on things. I'll ask Gary about this as well in just a couple of minutes. But that's the latest from Elon Musk, as he continues to try to do the heavy lifting for Trump, but he's doing it in more and more underhanded ways.
Big shout out.
A big shout out. The uprights. Mark Thompson is great. Google it.
Big shout out.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Google
it.
It's I appreciate that. Wow. It's just what I needed. It's the elixir I need. Yeah. Here is why would you go through a website like that to register to vote, says Karen. Well, here's what sadly is the case. People are Googling where to register to vote, how do I register to vote, something like that. You just Google it, like you would anything. And then this comes up, and it comes up in the algorithm because you've got, these huge tech brains and their money making sure that comes up first or up high in any kind of Google search. So you end up with, click, this will help me register to vote. You get this thing, and then what happens is what I described. So it's a little bit of a Trojan horse, I guess is what I'm saying. It's an innocent mistake that people, apparently are making. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tell me what our situation is. Do we have time for some quick news before Gary? Yeah, right?
Yep, we do.
Okay, cool. I've got a lot more. Looking forward to getting to it. I'll remind you, if you would, please, we'd appreciate it. Smash the like button, thumbs up.
Smash it with your iron rod.
It's kind of a little bit of a day here because we do have a major announcement.
A major announcement from the Mark Thompson Show. A major announcement.
While we were sleeping, we passed 40,000 subscribers on this channel, which for us is a big deal. We have no way to promote the channel. We have no way except for those who are sharing links to the channel or a segment that they saw or whatever. Apart from that, it all has to happen spontaneously. We don't really have a machine. We're a homegrown show. So it's really exciting to have 40,000 subscribers. Thank you all. If a portion of you or every other one of you could hit the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That would help. There it is, 40,000,139.
Wow,
really,
that's
really
awesome.
Cool. And so grateful.
40,140.
And counting. We've got one more right now.
Wow.
Shout out.
Also want to we'll thank Kim and Albert and Tony, and our Coachella Valley Coffee and Tanuna Vineyard, because we wouldn't be on the air without all of those people helping to prop us up. and to make things happen every day. And most of all, our Patreon and PayPal subscribers. A couple of you I saw over the weekend have increased your donation every month. That is literally how we stay on the air. We are a PBS NPR model. We have, sure, ads on YouTube, but that is not enough to keep this show on the air. So we needed your donations, and you have stepped up and made them. And for that, I am so grateful. And we run your names at the end of every show because we are grateful. You made every show happen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
If you make a donation, it'll be updated, and your name will be added to that list at the beginning of next month. So we do it monthly.
So much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Quickly, let me handle a couple of these notes. Lance says, all these billionaires spending and dark money in politics, including the Citizens United case, needs to be brought under control. All that money could have been used to make our country better. Of course, you're right, Lance. And I would say this, that is probably, I don't know if I would call it the original sin, but maybe among the original sins in American politics is the way we've allowed money into our political system. It is shameful. It's obscene. It really is third worldish, you know? It's so for all of the purity of these elections that we try to achieve, the idea that we allow money in politics, Citizens United and other court cases supporting these kinds of donations and dark money. Read the Jane Mayer book. The Jane Mayer book shows you how dark money's getting into everything. It's into the politics, and it's into the universities, and it's into all these different systems, essentially, that precede a major election of the sort that we're going to have. So you're absolutely right about that. But happy Labor Day, everybody. That's the, yeah. All right, Kim's News, and then we'll check in with Gary Dietrich, who is the CBS and iHeart Radio political analyst. Looking forward to talking to him. Smash the like button. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Talk about the markets again. We've got fears of a recession rising as American financial markets spiral today. The inventor of the so-called SAHM rule, S-A-H-M, SAHM rule, doesn't believe that we're in a recession today, but says we're not in a good place either. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down more than 1,100 points in early trading. S&P 500 down more than 3%. NASDAQ slipping more than 800 points as well.
So the SAHM rule is an indicator when the 3-month average unemployment rate rises a half a percentage point or more above its lowest point in the past year, then it's considered potentially the onset of a recession. So that's what the SAHM rule is.
Oh, thank you for the explanation there. I didn't know I have my own financial guy right here. This
yes,
is nice.
I wouldn't invest the way I do, but I can explain the
So I was following Wes, our listener Wes, over the weekend, and his a lot of concerns about Tropical Storm Debbie. Now we know at least 4 deaths are being linked to Tropical Storm Debbie. It made landfall in Florida as a Category 1 hurricane this morning. Maximum sustained wind 65 miles per hour. The storm expected to weaken as it moves over Florida throughout today. All eyes on Philadelphia tomorrow, when Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate will hold a campaign rally. Vice President Harris spent the weekend interviewing prospective running mates, including Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. This follows the Philadelphia rally. The Democratic ticket is then set to kick off a campaign tour through crucial battleground states, including Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. So, less than 24 hours away, we'll know who she's chosen. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris's husband is admitting to having an affair during his first marriage. The cheating allegations first reported in the Daily Mail. In a statement, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, acknowledged that he and his first wife, Kirsten Emhoff, went through some tough times on account of his actions, but that he took responsibility for that.
This is so nothing. I'll always have this position. I'll never change. I don't care about affairs. I don't care about who's rolling around with who. I don't care about gay, straight, any of that. It's got nothing to do with anything. And that was my position when Donald Trump was president. It's not like not like I'm justifying it for Emhoff. And this is his last wife. He's divorced from her. Okay, we don't even. But more to the point, Donald Trump had hot and cold running women. I don't care. That's his business. Has nothing to do with, I've got nothing good to say about Donald Trump, but that's not one of the dings on him as far as I'm concerned. So, but here in America, a puritanical nation, it's the easiest thing to understand. Oh, Mark, but it shows that you can't respect a vow. Whatever, man. There are many kinds of marriages. There are people who swing. There are people who everybody's got their own life when it comes to, you get the point. I don't mean to go off on this too much, but to me, it's a nothing burger. It probably would be anyway without this speech, but I'm just saying it is really not germane to anything who he had an affair with in the first marriage.
It becomes news. And I guess you could say that if we don't mention it, then, we've mentioned Donald Trump's affairs, so is it all fair game then?
Oh, no. I get why it's being mentioned. And in fact, I'll tell you, there is a lot of, this is something I could talk to Gary Dietrich about, although, again, I almost think it's not worth the time, but there was talk that this was actually leaked by the Harris people because they wanted to get it out so that it wouldn't be treated as this sort of bombshell development. And so that speaks to how much of a nothing it is, but how also it's not something that they fear too much. As I say, there's considerable buzz that they actually might have gotten the word out there.
CrowdStrike firing back at Delta Airlines after its CEO blamed the cybersecurity firm for its service meltdown that he said cost the airline company $500 million. A letter from CrowdStrike's legal counsel to Delta rejected those claims and said it was highly disappointed by Delta's suggestion that CrowdStrike acted inappropriately. The letter added CrowdStrike's CEO offered personal online assistance to Delta's CEO and didn't receive a response. The Oakland A's have agreed to sell their share of the Coliseum complex to the African American Sports and Entertainment Group. It's the same group that recently bought the city of Oakland's share for $105 million. The A's are selling their interest for $125 million. The deal was announced today and finalizes what might be in store for this complex. The next step is for the Alameda County supervisors to approve the deal. Tents are returning to San Francisco less than a week after crews removed several encampments from the city.
What?
Residents and business owners say the situation is exasperating because as soon as the police leave, the homeless people return to reestablish their encampments.
Seriously, what the
Mayor London Breed has promised a more aggressive approach to homelessness. Among the solutions she's offered include a free bus ticket to wherever homeless individuals would like to go.
Oh, my
They're
God.
Out. Just send them out of town. Somebody else's problem down the line.
You're going to Las Vegas. Right now, actually. Oh, gee, I need a little time. Nope, right now. You're going right now.
$20 on a bus ticket. Bye-bye. Sayonara,
well, that one
sucker.
didn't last long. For those who don't follow the story closely, so in San Francisco, it seemed as though this pretty libby-lib mayor had enough and said, I'm going to start cleaning up the streets, and she did. She went after all of these homeless encampments, got them off the streets. It's a real problem in San Francisco, as you know. And apparently, just a week later, they are back. So I don't know what happened in the interim, but clearly it was nothing permanent.
No. I guess getting a hold of another tent is pretty easy. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is denying reports she pressured President Biden to drop out of the 2024 election. In an interview with CBS News Sunday Morning, Pelosi said she didn't lead a campaign to remove President Biden from the top of the Democratic ticket. She said she had confidence that the president would make the right choice for the country.
I don't know whether I believe her, honestly. Look, there's even Seymour Hersh reports that Obama went to Biden. I don't know if he went to him, but he spoke to him and kind of gave him the ultimatum, in effect. I don't know if it was a tag team, how it worked, but I believe there was pressure from the highest levels of the party.
Sure.
Pelosi, Obama, perhaps, for Biden to step down. But I also think that he looked at the numbers, and I think that Biden saw that the grim reality was he wasn't going to carry the election. There was just no path to victory.
Pressure is different than forcing. I mean,
right.
If I come to you and give you my opinion, is that pressuring, or is that just me offering my thoughts on the matter?
Well, let's be honest. When, hey, it's Barack Obama calling. How are you? Yeah. I want to talk to you about this campaign. I just think that it's reached the, yeah, on the one hand, it's your opinion. On the other hand, you are, when you're saying to someone, I think for the good of the party, you should step down, that's maybe it's
Joe Biden's not. I mean, Obama's a former president. Biden's the current president. He's not going to do anything he doesn't want to do.
I get it, but you're talking about a pressure campaign. Those are the people who are involved. Pelosi, Obama, high-profile Democrats. I'll ask Gary about it.
Let's see what Gary Dietrich has to say.
Yeah.
CDC warning about a new COVID variant that's doubled in the U.S. in just 2 weeks. And once again, they've really gone all out on the naming of it. It's called KP 3.1.1. It now accounts for 1 in 4 COVID cases in America. Public health experts say it's much more infectious than previous variants, and it may be better at evading immunity built up by existing COVID vaccines as well. No stopping this massive California wildfire. It now tops 401,000 acres to become the 4th largest ever in the state. Crews made progress over the weekend by reaching 31% containment of the park fire, but again, they're battling triple-digit temperatures this week. It's critical fire weather because of dry, gusty winds. That park fire, believed to have been started by arson less than 2 weeks ago near Chico, it's destroyed 640 homes and buildings in Butte and Tehama counties. The state is again using National Guard lawyers to crack down on crime. California finalizing an agreement that allows them to begin handling cases in Alameda County, including in the city of Oakland, where several businesses have closed or made changes because of rising crime. Some offices even told workers it wasn't safe to leave the area for lunch. Governor Gavin Newsom says the move will help secure justice for people all over the Bay Area. And lastly, the Los Angeles area home of actor Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson burglarized. Thieves got onto the property in broad daylight while the celebrity couple was out of town. Police say the criminals smashed the window of a guest house and climbed in. It's unclear what was stolen, but the burglars didn't enter the main house.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Apparently, that's exactly what happened. Police say the burglary happened a few weeks ago. They're only revealing the details now. There have been several celebrity break-ins of late, including the homes of Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee, film director Quentin Tarantino, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, actor John Stamos, and several others as well. So add Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson to that list.
Wow. Because when celebrities have their homes broken into, it's more important than when the rest of us.
Right.
Don't you think?
Clearly. Yeah. Right. Well, there's the more valuable stuff to take, right?
Well, that's true, too.
I don't know. This report.
Tom Hanks, he's a national treasure. I hope that they bring those people to justice.
If I broke into your house, the first thing I'd go for is that whiz-bang espresso machine you've got in the kitchen.
That's the only thing of value. So
yeah.
you would grab anything coffee-related, you'll do well.
This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It's a huge selection of coffees they've got and amazing teas. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Please make sure to get your exclusive 10% off just for being a Mark Thompson Show listener. You type in Mark T all together at the checkout when you can enter the checkout code. Mark T will get you 10% off across the board.
I'm having an espresso right now from Coachella Valley Coffee, and I'll tell you, it is it's all that sustains me, my friends. It's all that sustains me. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, Mark T at checkout for anything on the site and everything on the site. You'll get 10% off.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson.
Wow. Well, I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy it's a Monday because we get to talk to a guy who really can add some details on a number of things happening related to politics. This guy, longtime KGO political analyst, but more importantly, he has evolved to being political analyst for CBS television stations and iHeart Radio. So generous to be with us on Mondays. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Hi, Gary. So, Gary, talk to me about what's happening. This campaign and the electoral map seem to be completely recharged based on the fact that the top of ticket has changed to Kamala Harris. Hang on one second. Why am I not hearing Gary, Albert? Albert, do you can you go in there and he may have it an automatic mute thing, so if you can just ride herd over that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, let me just Gary, just try to leave and come right back because everything looks good on my end.
I think Tony usually hits the rides herd over the mute somehow, you know, in a. All right, this is something that we can probably solve pretty quickly. I know that what happened in weeks past is Tony has to ride because there's certain default options that are there, and so excuse me.
Yeah,
So
he'll get back.
organized.
He'll pop right back in. There's a lot to ask him about today, and it's exciting with this, vice presidential selection on the line in the next few hours.
Meanwhile, Luis says with a super chat, coming this Christmas, when he loses the election, orange is the new black, the Trump years. He will monetize this like he does everything else.
Big shout out.
Well, he is, when it comes to making money, we told you the story about the $10 million in cash that he got from the Egyptians, or likely got from the Egyptians. It's still being established, but it looks as though if I broke into Mark's house, I'd just play with his cats. Newsom will never be president, says Spencer.
Big shout out.
I mean, that may be. I don't know. He's got a lot of the right stuff, but Gary would be really good to talk to you about that. Hopefully we'll get this Gary Dietrich thing organized. Sally and Callie, this is the closest I can get to 40K. Congrats. $40. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
In fact, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really am. In fact, I saw also a Maud Day. 40 for 40, honey. Right on.
Big shout out.
So
we hit
sweet.
40,000 subscribers today, so we're very excited. And Maud, you've been there since the beginning. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The channel has grown largely as a result of you guys sharing it and supporting it. So
We have
really
one more
do.
here. It's like a major news. We'll probably table that because Gary is back, so we could.
Good. Oh, you got him? Go ahead. So if you can bring him back, please, that'd be great. So on this weekend that, don't worry, when we drop this video, all of that we just saw will be cut out. So, Gary, the state of the race seems to be a dead heat. The flagging numbers that we saw from Joe Biden seem to have been erased by Kamala Harris. She's picking a running mate today, probably. I mean, give me your take on what's happening and on the arc of the progress Harris is making.
Okay, first off, Mark, can you hear me this time?
Yeah,
We all good?
beautifully. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, very good. All right, so here's the deal. Let's run down a couple things. First off, the running mate deal. I mean, this is a fantastic news cycle item, right? This thing's, I mean, the Harris team, you have to hand it to them. They've done a good job at stringing this thing out a long time, right? I mean, after she was notably pretty obvious 2 weeks ago that she was going to replace Biden, the next big ticket item, right, was who's she going to pick as a VP. And so, I mean, there is some strategic plan to all this. I know some people think, well, it's taking a long time to make up her mind. No, you want to have the news cycles, everybody buzzing about Shapiro and Bashir, and then Walz comes in from Minnesota. I mean, there's something to be said for that. Believe me, campaign operatives are very astute at moving those things on the, let's just shall we say, the web chart. So today's going to be it. We'll know. Why is that significant? Well, it's going to send some signals, clearly. You know, if it's a Pete Buttigieg, it's going to be a very different than if it is a Shapiro from Pennsylvania, for a whole bunch of reasons we won't go into today. It will also, Mark, potentially signal what the Harris teams believe is their number one path to the nomination. If she picks Shapiro, we're going to know they think the blue wall of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania must hold to win the nomination. If they pick a Kelly from Arizona, Senator Kelly, no, we got a couple of paths. Yeah, we're going to do that, but we're also looking at grabbing the Southwest. Maybe we grab Georgia, maybe even North Carolina. So it's going to tell us a lot about the campaign's process and their thinking. Secondly, let me say that this thing about Emhoff, because I heard you talking about it before I jumped in, this is very interesting to me because whether it was the Harris team or otherwise, my point in this, Mark, is very simple. This tells people what I've been saying for the last several weeks nonstop. Look, well, she's already been vetted as vice president. Did you hear about the Emhoff thing when she was running for, she got picked as vice president? No. It is a completely different animal when you become the nominee. So don't expect this to be the last thing. We've already heard the rumblings. You know the stories, Mark, Willie Brown, Kamala Harris, yada, yada, yada. You're going to hear a lot more in the next 3 months because when you take that top dog slot, the lights get turned up big time. Last thing I want to say right now is these new economic numbers. This is and the Harris team are well aware of this. What's going on right now with the stock market, what's going on with the job numbers, with the tick up in unemployment, this is the Achilles heel that the Harris team knows that they have. With the economy and inflation being job one in this election, let's go back to it's the economy stupid with Bill Clinton. But this is the deal. They need these numbers to not keep trending in this direction, which is, I believe, why you're hearing immediate reaction from Elizabeth Warren and others that the Fed needs to, lower the interest rate because they know very well if the next 90 days become about the economy, she probably does not win.
Typically, the markets rally a bit before an election, don't they, Gary?
Well, that's typically true. But what we're seeing now is a lot of what George Bush Sr. struggled with. In 1988, the economic numbers that year were trending in his direction. But people weren't feeling it, Mark. They were still feeling doldrums. And he really had to struggle with that to get over the top because he said, let me take that back. That's when he lost to Bill Clinton. Right. Because people were not feeling in 92, they were not feeling the effects of that turnaround in the numbers. And he and his team were screaming about the numbers, but people weren't feeling it, and it cost him the election.
It is true what was it John Watson just said this? I think this is a point, but I think you'll agree. Nonetheless, he says the stock market is not the economy. Yeah, that's true, and it's not true. I mean, I'll let you speak, but I think it is an indicator of economic health. There is a lot of money tied up in the stock market related to retirement funds and this. So even if you're not in the market per se, you are in the market usually one way or another. And also, this is a headline grabber. Wouldn't you agree with that, Gary? I mean, that's, I think, one of the problems. Regardless, it may not be a sign of the overall economy, but it's definitely going to dominate the headline.
There's no question about that, Mark. And when you tag that together with the, jobless numbers that came out, with the jobs report on Friday, which came in much lower than expected in terms of the number of jobs created, and that ticked up unemployment by 0.2. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's where people get nervous, right? Like, oh my gosh. And then we had here in California, you may have heard, man, Intel is going for a big whack-a-mole on their employment base. I mean, they're talking about cutting 15% of their employees in a major tech employer in California. Those are the kinds of things, Mark, that get people's attention and can really slow down a campaign's momentum significantly if they continue.
We see layoffs of the sort that you just referenced across the tech world particularly, and they're brutal. And a lot of these tech bros are GOP. So it's, it's not, they leaned Republican, but it just speaks to frankly, the grim economic realities. Things are changing in Silicon Valley and beyond. I mean, these formerly incredibly healthy companies are now having to make some very tough cuts. Now, let me ask you about Trump. He gets out there on the stump. He plays the old hits where he's hating on a new person every hour. He goes after a popular Republican governor in Brian Kemp. It just seems so... there's no plan there. He's just so impulsive. He just and that it might work out for him. It's worked out for him before, but I wonder if you can just give me a thought on how he'll behave through the next couple of months.
Well, I am the last person that wants to make a prediction about Donald Trump's behavior in the next 3 months. But what I will tell you is this, though. What you're saying, Mark, is being echoed inside the Trump campaign. It's being echoed in the halls of Congress, especially in the U.S. Senate, where now there's reports coming out. These Republican senators want one thing. They want the last seat or two to control that chamber come November, because that means committee chairs, chairmanships for them. It means being able to control the judicial approval process for appointments. There is a lot at stake. And the Republicans have the deck stacked in their favor, not because they did anything to do this, but by 3-1, the Democrats have far more vulnerable seats to protect in that U.S. Senate than the Republicans do. So they are speaking out about this and doing so quite publicly. that, the discipline in the Trump campaign has waned in the last couple of weeks. What was seen, Mark, is a very different campaign so far. The Trump team really had their candidate under control. They were on message. They were riding high after the GOP convention. And all the brouhaha in the last couple of weeks with Biden and Harris and yada, yada, and now the VP pick, I think has sent Donald back into old Donald mode. Now, will this change as they get, this VP and the race, as we say, settles down in the next week or two? I know there's a lot of Republicans that are hoping that's the case.
So when you say it's echoed inside his campaign, does that mean some of this, I would call, maybe desperation is too strong a word, Gary, but it's definitely, you feel in Trump the anxiety that he feels, the anxiety about the size of his crowd. We played the soundbite about essentially, hey, I'd have a bigger crowd, and my crowd would actually be bigger than Kamala Harris's if they'd let another 1,000 people in. And she had an entertainer on stage, so it's no wonder her crowd was so big. This reflects a certain anxiety to me that he must have. So are you saying that that anxiety is reflected inside the campaign as well?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word anxiety, Mark. I would use the word, okay, we need to all take a deep breath here. And I think I would call it more, not recalibration. It's like, let's get back to the playbook we started 2024 with, kids. And that includes you, Donald. And he's got some very sharp campaign advice. You're hearing this from Democrats too, by the way. Carville's even talking about this. So a lot of people saying this campaign is being run very differently than it was 8 years ago. And so that's what we're hearing from inside the campaign is, look, we need to get back to what was working, back to what was winning. Let's stop talking about, her heritage and a woman and crowd sizes. But see, here's the thing. A lot of things have combined to make that so. One of them is the fact that he was shot in an outdoor venue. And the Secret Service has made very clear to the Trump campaign, look, you need to move everything inside. We simply cannot in the current environment. And now we got Iran making noises, right? That they are intentionally looking to take American politicians. I mean, we know, and there's probably, I'll guarantee you, there's a lot of noise in that whole political violence thing that we're not even privy to. That's just the reality. That's the nature of things these days in the world. So what am I saying? Trump's had to move all of his events into indoor venues, which by their very nature are far more controlled, typically smaller. And so that's part of the angst too. This guy, as you well know, Mark, you've been in the business a long time. Numbers, crowd sizes, all that means a lot to somebody on stage, and it means a lot to Donald Trump.
Yeah, he really does focus on that in a big, big way. And, when he chose J.D. Vance, that was when Biden was still in the race. And you could tell, I thought, with that choice, and you and I might have even touched on it, you could feel he was feeling really good about things because J.D. Vance didn't bring him anything on the ticket except another blowtorch like Trump who could go after the libs, and JD may still do that for him. But now I'd say what I pick up on is not that sense of confidence, but again, maybe small d on desperation, but I would just say that desperate to pivot, maybe not desperation fighting for his life, but desperate to pivot. And if you leave it to what his instincts are, sometimes they're good. Sometimes he's amazing. He's a salesperson, and sometimes he pivots to something and go, wow, that was, wherever he got it, it turned out well. But sometimes you just see him flailing, and I feel like we're seeing more of that these days than we are of something really considered,
Yeah, I do think you're right about that. I wouldn't use the word desperation again. As I've been talking, Mark, I think it's frustration.
Okay,
because he has been dominating the news cycle in a very positive ways, I'll tell you what, once those trial verdicts and the Supreme Court decision came down and all that stuff, right? Once cases got set aside, nobody's even talking about the Trump legal stuff anymore. That shows you how off the radar screen it is. And that's remarkable because Democrats really had planned on running on that clear through November 5th. That's off the table for right now, and it probably will be. From all indicators we have right now, based on where we are going to courts. So that being said, that combined with the sinking Biden poll numbers and the focus being negative on Biden is, even from all the national media, Trump was flying high, cycle after cycle after cycle of the news, nothing but positive. So I would say there's been a significant frustration since the week after the GOP convention ended. Joe Biden stepped aside that ill-fated Sunday, and then by 48 hours later, they had their new candidate, and that started changing the entire narrative. I think there's significant frustration for Trump in all of that.
Last thing for you, Gary Dietrich, is about the debate. You know, he agreed to 2 debates on ABC. Now he says, I don't want to do any more debates on ABC. I'll debate Kamala Harris if she'll come over to Fox. Kamala Harris has said, I'm going to still show up at that ABC News appointment time. And if you're there, great. If you're not, great. By the way, I don't necessarily see that as a great play on her part. We could discuss that, but I'm more curious as to whether you think we could really see a presidential election. There'll be no real debate between Harris and Trump.
I think that's possible, Mark. And here's the reasons why. I'll say this real quick. Trump reasons. Look, we already agreed to, it was, by the way, CNN, remember, June 27th, and this is ABC, was going to be September 10th. He said, okay, fine. The thing about it is, I think he learned from that June 27th debate. I mean, Joe Biden lost that debate, right? We know that for sure. But Trump, by the way, he doesn't just want a different network. He wants it to be a large audience. And when I say large, he wants it to be in an arena, okay? That's what his campaign has said. You know, and I think the deal about it is, their view is, look, we gave away the store. It really was the Biden-Harris ticket that set all those parameters. Cut off the mics, no audience. It's going to be on CNN, you know, which, to be fair, CNN is a, you know, center to left-leaning network. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. That's, for the most part, that's true in most people's view. Now, some people are going to yell about that. Okay, fine. But let's just say they haven't been real Trump-friendly. I think that's a fair assessment from a nonpartisan guy. But so Trump wanted to say, look, okay, you know what? We're going to change this narrative up a little bit because I've already been there, done that. I'm going to get the same thing at ABC because doubtless the Harris people want the same rules. No audience, cut off the mics, do it at ABC. So that's the deal. From the Harris's tickets point of view, they're trying to get as much mileage as they can out of Trump weaseling out of the debate in their view, chickening out, right? And I think there's something to be said, Mark. We can talk about this going forward. I'm not sure the Harris team is looking forward all that much to putting her out there because in their view, things are going well. That could end up being not a Biden disaster, but not a positive for them. And I think there's some nervousness inside the Harris camp as well. Look, right now, it might be better for us to make hay out of Trump backing out than it is to actually go all in.
I could not agree with you more. In fact, I'm so glad to hear you say it because I feel like when I say it, people look at me like, you know, side-eyed. They always hear about, are you kidding? She's going to own him. Don't touch anything. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? You're click-clacking along. Now you want to throw this other variable that you're really not sure about into the mix. But it would be extraordinary if there was no debate. And the idea... And I'm so glad you mentioned it, that the rules change and all of a sudden now you're playing to a crowd. I mean, that's Trump's thing. He'll just play to a crowd. He wants a world wrestling style event. And, you know, if you give him that, it'll be wild, but it will not particularly have anything substantive associated with it.
Mark?
Yeah.
Well, can I add one quick thing? And that is, remember, people, you know, memories are short. Kamala Harris did not do that well in the debates in that primary in 2020. She just did not. Okay, the most memorable moment, quite ironically, was when she took on then her future boss, Joe Biden, over race. Remember that? That's what shot her standing up in the polls initially. And then people said, yeah, but the rest of her debate stuff, she didn't really seem to do that well. So you got to be careful what you wish for. And the Harris people are very aware of that.
Totally agree. Gary, love talking to you. This is great today. Once we got the audio, it was really clean and great. You can find Gary across the iHeart Radio network, also on CBS television stations across the CBS television network, and here on Monday. So grateful for you, pal. Thank you so much. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We have True Crime Corner up ahead. Also a word about animals to kind of change gear. I wanted to see if there was anything I needed to attend to in the chat. Did you see anything, Albert?
Have, kind of a breaking major announcement.
A major announcement from the Mark Thompson Show. A major announcement.
Wow. What is this?
It's from Jennifer.
Wow. Jennifer Taylor, come on. $100 keeping this channel alive. Right on. Jennifer Taylor is, can I say this, Albert? She is my new favorite person?
Big shout out.
Yeah, she's top. Yeah. I'm not going to cry.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
But I might cry.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
Jennifer, that is so cool of you. Thank you, or as I like to say, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And I also like to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The best. We would not be here without people like Jennifer Taylor and all of you who have contributed today and do every day and every month. And it's really cool that you step up. My favorite McAllister. How about Lucy McAllister for a 20? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Thank you, Lucy. That is really cool. Wow. What a good day. We crack 40,000 subs and we pick up some really great contributions along the way and supporters in this community. You know, we started from a talk radio station. It was a huge talk radio station. And then corporate ownership came in, collapsed the station, and now it's a gambling station. It's literally sports gambling is what they run there, and they don't do any ratings at all. But that's their own business. It's their station. They can do what they want. But we took it over here, and this, you know, out of primordial ooze of a few listeners, we were able to grow it. West Theory, $5 storm passed me with no incident, actually, today, he says. Well, that's
Big
good.
shout out.
Love to hear that. And I already read this, but another shout out to Luis.
Big shout out.
Yeah. About Trump monetizing. Love it. Now we have True Crime Corner next, right, Albert?
Yes, we do. And I think we have some time
actually,
for...
Karen Dawn is next.
Oh, is that the way it's working? Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going by the rundown, which is needs an update. But that's cool. So I have nothing else to attend to. I was going to mention one other thing, but I can't think of what that thing is now. So without any further delay, let's do it. A word about animals.
Sorry, I'm new to Mondays. Let me find where that word of animals is.
All right,
okay,
while
I'm
you're
ready
looking
now,
for
Mark.
it.
If you want to do it for the video, we could just read.
All right, here we go. So we like to check in on our creatures that we share the planet with. We do it in a segment we call A Word About Animals.
Now, a word about animals on the Mark Thompson Show.
And the person who comes through regularly to update us on the animal kingdom is Karen Dawn, she of Dawn Watch. You can find Dawn Watch on Facebook. You can also Google Dawn Watch, and you'll be able to find it as well. And, of course, it's dawnwatch.com. But I thought of you yesterday because I was reading the Sunday paper, and I saw a column from Nicholas Kristof, I think it was, and he was talking about how we love and adore our dogs. And he was just talking about the reverence and the fun and the sort of magical relationship we have with these dogs. And yet a whole bunch of other animals who have exactly the same emotional set. They're able to connect with us. And even in the case of, for example, pigs, they're intellectually more developed. They're able to actually develop relationships that are even more sophisticated with you. Not that that should be a life-death proposition, but just to speak to how those are evolved creatures, and yet we treat them just like things. We eat them and we, essentially throw them away. He was even more, honestly, graphic than I was right then in that description. But I thought of you, Karen Dawn, because I feel like underpinning a lot of what you do is sort of that understanding that we need to treat all animals the way we treat our dogs.
You know what I loved so much about that column is something I try to do. I had a book out which was called Thanking the Monkey, Rethinking the Way We Treat Animals. And one of the main things I do is just try to get people to think about these things a little bit. And I don't tell people what they should do, what kind of choices they should be making. But, Dawn Watch encourages activists to encourage the media to do a better job of covering animal issues so that people can make informed choices in line with their own values, and so that people can think about these issues. And that's exactly what Kristof's column yesterday asked people to do, is say, hey, can we just start thinking about this a little bit more cogently, a little bit with less hypocrisy? He used the word hypocrisy. And thank you, Albert, for sharing that. I hope you guys can put it in the comments or when you launch the video. I provided a guest link to that column in the New York Times. Anything by Nicholas Kristof is, of course, worth reading. And I heard you refer to Tom Hanks as a national treasure before, which was fun. Well, if one is an animal person or any kind of truly thoughtful human being, I'd say Nicholas Kristof is a national treasure. So it's my joy to share yesterday's column with your folks. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to you read him as well. And that column was just so beautiful. And I shared a couple of lines from it. You mentioned that he was more graphic than you were in talking about what we do to pigs. And part of it ties in so beautifully to what we discussed a month ago when there was still talk about whether or not Biden was going to be the candidate. And I mentioned that one of the things that had hurt me so badly to do with his term in office was his administration's support of the pork industry against California when California people voted to ban a practice which is just so horrendous. And I described it as keeping these pigs in coffin-sized crates. And in his piece, he uses the same terminology that breeding female pigs are kept in these crates for pretty much their entire lives, where they can't turn around. They can't stretch out. You can't lie down with their legs outstretched. All they can do is kind of bite on the bars and go crazy. And he even mentions in his column that when a pig is first put in one of these crates, she struggles and she's upset. And within a couple of years, you can just do anything to her, pinch her, splash water on her. She doesn't respond. It's just complete, utter depression, catatonia. And he mentioned that this is the sort of thing that we do to pigs. And yet at the same time, we adore our dogs. We honor our dogs. And if Albert doesn't mind sharing, I put a quote up because a couple of his lines are so worth. Albert, tell me if you don't have it, but I attached it to what I sent over. And if you don't have it, I won't worry about it. We can just.
He's probably scrambling for it now. He's got it. There you go.
There it is. Mark, do you want to read it or do I want to read it?
You can read it because I haven't. Do you need me to read it? I will, but
no. I can put on my subtle
credibility glasses. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there are just so many beautiful lines through this whole thing. But what I wanted to share was, just as today we wonder how people like Thomas Jefferson could have been so morally obtuse as to own and abuse slaves, our own descendants will look back at us and puzzle over how 21st century humans could have tolerated factory farming and the systematic abuse of intelligent mammals, including hogs. And to see that in the New York Times, not coming from an animal rights person. I mean, Kristof does mention in that piece that he doesn't eat farmed animals anymore. But Dawn Watch and animal people have been following Kristof for well over a decade now, when he was very much still eating animals, but saying, look, he was really against factory farming. And there were animal people who were very upset that he could continue to eat pigs and chickens and folks like that when he knew that they had personalities. I always loved him because I thought as he wrote about this stuff, as he thought about this stuff, he was bringing his massive audience along with him.
Sure, nobody likes to have the finger wagged, and he's great. Not to interrupt you, but just the one line in there that was, I think pertains to what you're talking about as well. I'm skipping over some of the one line that's a little explicit, but this is the quote from Nicholas Kristof: "Someone mistreats a dog, and we'll call 911. But if a company tortures millions of hogs as a business model, we dine on its products, invest in its shares, and honor its executives. These are the moral contradictions we live with, and I think we tolerate them only because we don't reflect on them. So let's reflect," is what he says.
Amen. Yeah. And that's, as I said, the subtitle of my book was Rethinking the Way We Treat Animals. And it starts with the thinking. And, it's interesting. Kim got in touch today and she said she wasn't sure who was going to be doing the show because everybody was sick with COVID.
That's true.
And I know that you and I already look at this stuff the same way, and you made the choice when you found out what was happening to animals to stop eating them. Whereas I think Kim still does eat them, and I love her, and I think, and it's far more useful to talk to somebody who doesn't think your way. So as much as I love talking with you about this, I was super interested in what Kim's, thoughts upon reading that column would be, and whether things like that do make people think and do wonder, maybe shall I look at the alternatives to the bacon when you find out what pigs go through on factory farms and the fact that they are just as intelligent and thoughtful, or more so than the dogs we love so much. So.
Well, Kim told me she's going the other way, which is actually she's going to start eating dogs. Isn't that what you said, Kim?
Yeah, that's my next move. That's how,
right,
yeah. I'm still in the reflecting stage, Kim.
Yeah, she said it's just too hard to get off of the meat, so she's actually just going to be fair now and start eating dogs.
And would she? And she probably might know me well enough to know it doesn't make any difference to me. I thought it was so funny with that Kennedy thing, and I don't want to talk about it, the rest of his politics with you, but there was that Vanity Fair hit piece on RFK, and they said that he ate a dog. And it turns out now, of course, the media has done a much lower job of covering the correction. It wasn't a dog, it was a goat. And a lot of this, you'll find stuff on the internet where he's saying it was a goat, and it showed him feeding other animals to his dogs. And it's such a strange thing to animal people that that's better, and it's like, and of course we understand that to most of the American public, that's a huge difference whether you're eating a dog or a goat. And I love that Nicholas Kristof is asking intelligent, thoughtful people in the New York Times to think about, well, why does that make a difference? And this leads us into another story I just wanted to bring up today. It's so closely connected, and this was from yesterday's news items also, though not the New York Times. This came out of the UK. A pet pig was killed for a hunting competition. And this adorable being's name was Eddie. And actually, I just said it was the UK, but I'm realizing now, no, it wasn't. It was in the US, and there's a photo of Eddie. And there's a competition, a wild hog hunting competition, and the hogs are killed, and they have to be video killed being shot. One of the reasons being apparently, and I respect this, to make sure that they weren't tortured. And then they get taken and weighed, and whoever brings in the biggest wild hog gets $1,000 prize money. And this woman who owned this sanctuary woke up one morning to find Eddie missing, and couldn't find him anywhere, and then saw that the fence had been cut. And then when she put something out saying, "Where's Eddie?" she got video sent to her of he had been killed for this competition. The hunters who ran the competition realized something was terribly wrong when generally the largest hog who comes in is about 150 pounds. And these boys had brought in this 250-pound hog. And then they noticed that the hog had been neutered, so something wasn't right here. These guys weren't the brightest that they thought they were going to get away with this. Not the brightest and not the kindest. And so this beloved hog, Eddie, has been, was killed for this hunting competition. And there will be consequences. It is against the law to kill an animal who somebody else owns without their permission.
So just to put a point on it, you're saying there is much hue and cry about the fact that Eddie was killed because Eddie was a domestic animal, domestic pig. But if Eddie had not grown up behind the fence of the house and been a domestic pig, it would have been perfectly fine to kill Eddie in that competition.
That's part of what I'm saying. But I am saying that, not that it would have been perfectly fine, but why do people think it would have been perfectly fine? But I also want to know that my own instinct on hearing about Eddie in particular being killed was just outrage and heartbreak, and the same as anybody else's. So immense compassion for the human who loved Eddie so much and wanting her to be able to get retribution. My instinct was, I wish she could just go out and shoot the men who shot Eddie. I mean, she loved a lot, and people who love their dogs dearly, I think some of them will understand that instinct. I mean, if somebody tries to hurt Winky Smalls, they're in big trouble. So I do get that idea that Eddie matters more than other pigs because he was loved by this human. But I just want us to all think about these things, that if a bunch of wild dogs are being hunted in the United States, that's considered horrible. But if it's a bunch of wild pigs, it's fine. But if it's Eddie, it's not fine. And then if it's coyotes, well, it's fine. For some people think it's fine, but others don't think it's fine. And I just love Nicholas Kristof for raising these issues and saying, can we think about this a little bit more? Can we come to some sort of moral, ethical ideas about what makes killing one animal fine and one animal not fine, and eating one animal fine and not the other? And can we acknowledge that all of these beings are intelligent and sentient and they matter? And I always say, and I've said it so many times on your show, Mark, and that if we could only get laws that reflected how most people feel about animals, then we'd be going a long way. We wouldn't have factory farming. We wouldn't have pigs kept in coffin-sized crates, because most people don't want that. So I'd like the laws.
We can't get laws to reflect the way most people feel about any number of things, from handguns to public education to women's reproductive rights. So you can, animal rights people can take their place online there, because, on the long queue waiting to have the reflections of the public actually go into legislative law. There is, excuse me. Kim, help me.
That was the great pig goddess in the sky was just choking you on the, talking about other things that, yes, if they matter as much as animals do.
Mark. No, it's a little COVID rearing its head here. Yeah. I hear you.
All right.
What
it is? Sorry, go ahead.
The point you're making about, saying that, yes, we wish the laws reflected how people felt about any number of things. Absolutely true. And that's, and you talked earlier about money and politics and how that affects all of this. I do think when it comes to animals, the difference in how the laws are compared to how most people feel is even greater. I think I've mentioned before, they've got websites saying, does the dog die? Because people can't bear to watch a show where an animal is hurt. And yet we have this whole society built on the craziest amount of cruelty to animals, such as keeping intelligent beings in crates for their entire lives. So the difference between what people want and what is allowed is even greater when it comes to animals, I think.
Before we wrap up, I was just going to respond to Mark Perrin, who says, I hate to break it to you guys. By the way, whenever I see a communication of any kind that starts with, I hate to break it to you, I know the guy's being an a-hole. Okay, just being straight up. You don't start a comment with, I hate to break it to you guys, unless you're about to be a jerk. So, and I'm sure you're not a jerk, Mark, but that's just a jerky way to start a comment. So he says, I hate to break it to you guys, but if you were dead and a dog or a cat were starving, they would eat you. And a lot of times they wouldn't wait till you're dead. Dude, if I'm dead and they're starving, they can have at it, okay? I don't know what that's supposed to prove, that they're carnivores and I get it. Or you're trying to say, all I would say to you is, we have the developed brain not to torture these things for our food, okay? They are straight up carnivores working on instinct. But I find your comment a little bit on the insulting side, but I also think it's provocative, and I respect your, and I don't mind a little insulting, by the way. I feel like that's sort of what we have to be okay with. But I just want you to know, that's kind of a non-starter, what you said. If I was dead and they were starving, they would eat me. Great, good. Then at least it's staying in the food cycle, whatever, But anyway,
Mark,
thanks for your comment.
You know, I like the provocative comments. And, I appreciate what you said about the way he started that comment, because it's not, if you start with something as demeaning as I hate to break it to you guys, which is just demeaning, it's as if we don't know, it's not a way to win people over to your way of thinking. And certainly when I'm advising animal advocates how to talk, it's not like that. But I love that he raises this, because it just reminds me that, Mark, you and I don't eat animals, but that's not what we're here telling people, don't eat animals. We are talking, and Nicholas Kristof isn't saying, how can people eat pigs? he's talking about the way that they are treated before they are killed. And the dog and cat who would eat us if we were dead are not keeping us in crates for our entire lives so that they can kill us and eat us. It's not the same thing at all.
Yeah,
and,
that's very well put. Yeah.
As far as eating somebody once they're dead, I never had a problem with that alive.
No, drag my body out, and anybody who wants a chunk is welcome to it. Apparently,
I'd eat him if you were dead. So
I'm really good with some hot sauce. Sandy says Mark Perrin is a troll. He's the one we call the cackler. Well, I have no problem with the cackler or him being trollish. I really don't. But we just had to respond. I'm out of time for you, Karen Dawn. I love you, and I love the light that you point towards some of these issues. They tend to be provocative, but I think there's nothing wrong with that. You can find more and an ongoing kind of record of the way animal stories are being handled worldwide at dawnwatch.com. Again, Dawnwatch is all one word, dawnwatch.com. And her Facebook page, there's really a lot of action on that. So go to Facebook and you can find Dawnwatch there. Karen, always appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
You too.
That's Word About Animals for today.
Join the flock. Again next time for A Word About Animals on The Mark Thompson Show.
Woohoo!
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. Right on. I am loving it. I think my cat is just waiting for me to die, says Trevor, so he can eat me. Always nibbling on my toes when I'm asleep. Yeah, that's how it starts. Toe nibbling. I prefer a free-range Mark with hot sauce. Yes, I'm telling you, once I'm dead, I can't imagine you'd want to. But if somebody wants to move forward with a knife and fork, go for it. This just in. Rampage Radio SF. $6.66.
Evil.
666. When will the word stagflation be tossed around on yours or other shows?
Big shout out.
Well, actually, Gary Dietrich did throw around the word stagflation early on in our conversation with him. So I think it's today is the answer. Tom says, great. Now I'm craving a BLT for lunch. Right.
Or an
sort of
MLT.
had the opposite effect then, didn't it?
A Mark lettuce and tomato.
Yeah. Here's Santy mocking my mockery. I hate to break it to you guys. I'm not an a-hole. I love animals. All right. Okay. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Anyway, now Kim, help me.
Yeah.
We have a little news, and then can we do Turbo News and then True Crime
We'll
Corner?
do a shorty, and then we get True Crime Corner. We're into it. Yes.
I'll just mention this. We're watching, obviously, the vice presidential sweepstakes, for lack of a different way to refer to them, and the key, we talked about this last week, this weekend was face-to-face meetings. They're doing all the arithmetic. It seems as though it's Shapiro and Waltz who are down to the maybe Kelly, although I'm kind of beginning in everything I'm reading to feel as though Kelly is fading. But we're watching that minute to minute, and we'll obviously give you an update on that. The other thing we're watching minute to minute is the stock market. We'll give you those latest numbers as well. Smash the like button like a boss.
With your iron rod.
True Crime Corner is next as we continue after Kim's news. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. President Biden is meeting with his national security team today as tensions rise in the Middle East. There are growing fears of an attack by Iran on Israel following the recent killings of a senior Hezbollah commander in Lebanon and Hamas's top political leader in Iran. Iran and its allies have blamed Israel. They are threatening to retaliate. Former President Jimmy Carter says his goal is to be able to vote for Vice President Kamala Harris come November. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Jason Carter, the grandson of the former president, said his grandfather told his father, "I'm only trying to make it to vote for Kamala Harris." Early voting begins in Georgia on October 15th. The 39th president has been in hospice care since February of last year. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. admits he left a dead bear in New York City's Central Park 10 years ago. The independent presidential candidate posted a video to X on Sunday where he explains the story to comedian Roseanne Barr and says he wants to get the story out there before something comes out in the New Yorker. This just gets weirder and weirder, from brain worms to this. Kennedy said he saw this bear get killed on a roadway in the Hudson Valley, so he decided to pick it up and put it in his van so he could take it home, skin it, and use the meat. Instead,
ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Well,
he left it in Central Park instead.
Well, he was late, and then what happened is he put it in his car. This is, again, according to the story that he told. And then he was late for a flight, so he had to abandon I'm going to skin it, chop it up, and I'm going to eat it. And he couldn't leave it in the truck, so he took it to Central Park and dumped it. And then he had a bicycle with it that was also in the truck, and he tried to make it look like the bike hit the bear. And that was, he actually said all of this in the conversation with Roseanne. And then, as Kim has just noted, and he also notes this in the conversation, he felt that the word on this had to get out there because you were going to see articles about it written anyway. And so he wanted to tell the story. That's why he posted this conversation he had with all these details. He posted it to X in his conversation with Roseanne. But it is truly in that unhinged kind of category. There's nothing about the story that makes you like RFK Jr. Nothing. There's no, RFK Jr. He just justifies everything with because it's legal in New York for you to get roadkill, and you just have to register it with dude, stop explaining this. You are just making me not like you even more. So, and
I guess it was a big news story at the time. This bear found in Central Park.
Exactly, it was. It was a big.
It turns out it was RFK Jr. all along.
Right.
Talking about the word weird.
I don't know if Kim, we lost Kim for a second. New bedtime story, says Uncle Russ, RFK Jr. and the baby bear. Yeah, that's great.
Kim, I think you're back.
Okay, good.
Go for it.
Because I was going to say, this is weird. The word weird is applicable in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So bizarre. Okay. New technology is being tested in the UK to identify those at risk of a heart attack, and it's being called a game changer. It uses artificial intelligence to detect inflammation in the heart that CAT scans and X-rays can't see. Heart inflammation is linked to a greater risk of cardiovascular disease and deadly heart attacks. So, 5 people shot at
I've had more imaging and more crap with my heart in the last month. Honest to God, I am so, and I've got nothing wrong with my heart. That's the point. All the imaging shows, your heart looks great. Your heart, even the radiologist goes, why are you here? The heart looks fine. I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know why I'm on medication for my heart. Get me off the medication.
Maybe you need to go to the UK and use their AI technology.
Apparently. Yeah, I like that plan.
An inflamed heart. Let's find out.
Thank you for allowing me to lose it. It's something
Thank
I
you for
really.
sharing.
Why are you yelling?
We all need these moments. 5 people shot at an Oakland sideshow are in stable condition. They all arrived at different hospitals early yesterday morning. Police think the victims were watching drivers perform dangerous, illegal stunts near Fruitvale and MacArthur. No word yet on any suspects. The only Target store in East Palo Alto is shutting down. It's been a popular spot for Stanford students since it's only about 3 miles from campus. The next closest.
Oh, my Kim. Having internet issues. I hate it when stores close.
85 workers found out last week that they'll be laid off next month. So that's
How
a
many?
bummer. 85.
Jeez.
Yeah. And lastly, Deadpool and Wolverine once again shredding box office records. The Marvel Studios film took in $97 million at the domestic box office in its second weekend. Good enough for the 8th biggest second weekend ever. The third film in the Deadpool franchise is expected to cross the $1 billion mark in just a few days. It's crazy. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. My other half, Courtney, has entered the Mark Thompson Show studios in preparation for her segment, which is a True Crime Corner. But before I get to True Crime Corner, again, I have a
major announcement from the Mark Thompson Show. A major announcement.
I want to big shout out to Dillette. Dillette gives us $100 for our 40K subscriber mark. Big shout out. I'm not going to cry.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
If anything can make me cry, it's these big donations today. You guys have been so supportive.
Thank you.
And everybody who's supported with these high-profile donations, and I mean, I'm so grateful for every dollar, and we need every dollar. You're the reason we're here, and most of you have been here from the very beginning, which is quite impressive. So
Thank you so
much, Dillette. You fall into that category, love, of those who have been with us for quite some time. So thank you. If you want to be a part of things, you can. And I've told you before, the Patreon and PayPal links are under every video. And, of course, there is the website, themarkthompsonshow.com. And there are links to Patreon and PayPal, and that's really how we stay on the air. I'll take one other. Okay, here's one. Kevin MC says, Dems are doomed with 3 exclamation point. Dems are doomed with 3 exclamation. I mean, that's a lot of exclamation points to be doomed with. And I like it, he says. Oh, he likes the Dems are doomed. Okay. Thank you, Trump, for saving the country, he says. And then has 4 exclamation points after thank you, Trump, for saving the country. Well, I mean.
Trump 2024!
Yeah, Mickey, MAGA Mickey, and Kevin MC.
Trump 2024!
Good luck to you. Wow. Exciting. Man, Dems are doomed with exclamation points, too. Gordon says Harris is going to win. It's, well, one of the two probably will be the winner. Courtney, are you okay with where you are? Can you speak in the mic for a second?
Yeah, hi.
Albert, can you hear her okay? Because oftentimes we have to adjust.
Yeah.
I want to pre-adjust so we don't have to, once the segment starts, adjust.
I would also like to pre-adjust. If we could just turn her up just a little bit.
I think the cornerstone of this show is going to be pre-adjustment. What is the, what would you like? You want to turn her up?
Turn her up just a tad, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Hang on. Keep talking, please.
Okay,
Courtney.
I'll keep talking and making sure that the level is to your liking.
A lot of shows don't do this, everybody. This is...
Yeah, a lot of shows don't do this live while the show's on.
No,
they do
you know what?
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, we live out loud on this show, Courtney, and if you don't like it, maybe you should
3
find another show to
exclamation
do.
points. 4 exclamation points.
Yeah, okay. Can I also pre-adjust, says Tom. Yes, very good. Anyone can pre-adjust.
Yeah, it's the pre part that we need to get right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone, if you'll all take your seats, please, now.
Yeah.
We can continue. On Mondays, we like to take a walk into a world that is red hot. It is incredibly popular. It's the world of true crime. This is True Crime Corner.
Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
I want to also welcome my other half and the person who really has an abiding interest in this stuff, and that's Courtney, everyone. Yeah.
Hi. Yep. I've pre-adjusted. I'm here.
Yeah.
Now.
We both have COVID, but you seem to be bouncing back more quickly.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple dozen years on you.
It's not
fake. Well, you're a little younger. What's the problem, Albert? Is there an issue?
Oh, good.
That's not fake.
Well, we have a
That's
guest
real.
today. Yeah.
I'm excited about the guest.
know.
Please introduce the guest.
Well, today we have Carrie Wilson joining us for the segment. I'm so excited that Carrie agreed to come on and join us today. Hi, Carrie.
Hello, Carrie.
Hi, Courtney. Hi, Mark.
Now tell us how Carrie is linked to this story.
Carrie knew the victim in this story.
Wow.
And a little background, Carrie and her father and her stepmother are supporters of the show, fans of the show, and supporters of this segment. which is really wonderful. They've
been with us since the radio.
Yeah.
They've been with us since we were on KGO radio.
Yes,
That's exactly
yes. Right. I haven't even listened to you for that long.
No.
To be honest. And Carrie was so great. We had a wonderful conversation. She's just fantastic. And I asked her to join us today so we could talk about this crime. This is the murder of a young girl named Linda O'Keefe, who was murdered in 1973. And then they found and arrested the murderer in 2019.
Wow.
That's 46 years after the murder. But Carrie can shed some light for us on not only the community in which this happened, but knew and went to school with Linda O'Keefe, who was the victim in this story.
And how old was she when she went missing?
She was 11.
And so
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt,
I was going to ask Carrie. So
yeah,
Carrie, tell us a little bit about your background. You grew up then in Orange County, California, because this happened in Corona Del Mar.
Yes, I grew up in Corona Del Mar. And Mark, I just have to say, I've been listening to you since I learned how to drive, and that was a long time ago. 3 years. But,
I'm glad you got that driving thing worked out too. Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah.
So I grew up for part of my young life in Corona Del Mar on a street called Goldenrod, and Linda lived about 5 or 6 blocks over on Orchid. Corona Del Mar was a beautiful community, very safe. I'm sure if we ran the statistics, it would show that it was, very low crime. Certainly, there had never been any kind of child abduction or anything. And so I went to school with Linda, and Linda was such a nice young person. She was one of the few people in, elementary school, of course, kids sometimes can be, not very nice. And Linda was always just such a sweet girl. And, we would eat lunch together and walk home together. She lived about half a mile farther than I did from the school. But yeah, so you
would walk, just the two of you would walk from school together?
Well, when school got out, of course, there were other kids around, but her and I would walk together, just her and I.
Yeah. I'm just curious, especially those times we would now think twice, 3, 4 times before we let kids walk, even 2 young girls walk by themselves. I mean, it's just crazy how I just feel society has become far more predatory in some of the things we have to deal with than in, even the 70s. There was bad stuff going on in the 70s, as we, we're about to hear.
Yeah, because this happens when Linda's walking home from school alone. And that is when she is taken by the person who ultimately murders her. Mm-hmm.
So, I'm sorry, so go ahead.
Yeah, so you were saying that you both walked home from school, and that it's really so interesting. It's been one of the first times that I've ever spoken to somebody who knew the victim as much as you did, and just to understand what a sweet soul and sweet young girl Linda was, is truly moving.
Yes, she definitely was, because I have always remembered her, not obviously just because of this horrible tragedy, but because, she was one of the few friends that I, went to school with. And I, have a very faint memory. Of course, we're going back to elementary school, but I think we had homemade clothes in common. Yes, absolutely.
So what happened with the story?
So Linda went to summer school, and Linda was in summer school. The day is July 6th, 1973. And Linda's at summer school. I think it was her math teacher or tutor, or piano teacher, offered to drive her to summer school. So she didn't ride her bike. And if you're watching, you can see Linda. There's a photo of Linda with her bike. She did not ride her bike to summer school, as she might have on certain days. So when she got to summer school, it was required that she would then have to get home by herself. She does call her mom and her sister, and she asks them to pick her up because she doesn't want to walk home, but they're not available. Barbara is Linda's mother. She is busy, and Cindy is her older sister. She is busy as well. So Linda begins the walk home at 1:00 from school. And I think if you go down, actually, there's a couple visuals of the family that I have. Thank you. This is Linda's family. I did not have the name of her younger sister, but that is her father and her mother, and then her sister, Cindy. Linda is the small girl, young girl on the left, the middle child. She was particularly close with her father, Richard. If you go down too, you'll see a couple more pictures of the family. So Linda starts the walk home, and if you go down, there should be a map, and that map shows where the school was and where the home was. That looks really far, Carrie.
How far was it?
Yeah.
So Linda and I were at Harbor View together. Summer school was held at Lincoln. And I'm going to say it was probably 1.5 to 2 mile, not quite 2 mile walk, maybe 1.5 miles, if that, to get from Lincoln to her house.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. So Linda starts the walk home. Now, there is a woman who sees Linda. She's a young girl at the time. I think she's 17 or so. If you go down to Albert, we should be able to show a visual of her. Her name is Janine. I think she goes by Jandy. And so she is with her mother, and they see Linda at the corner of Marguerite and Inlet. And Linda is there talking to a man who has a blue van. It's described as a van that's slightly darker than the Sears turquoise blue. I saw this. I don't know. This has not been confirmed as the suspect's truck. But they're the last people to see Linda. Now, the mother of Janine's mother takes note of what the suspect looks like, but doesn't immediately report it because it doesn't look like Linda is in danger. She just makes note of Linda with this strange man or stranger.
Sure.
And then they go home. But Linda never goes home. And so the family start to get worried about Linda's whereabouts, obviously, as she's not home. And so they report her missing, and people begin searching for Linda. For Linda. Were you part of that, Carrie? Were you searching for her on the night or the morning of her disappearance?
No, I was not part of that.
Yeah, so they searched in and around Corona del Mar, which is where she lived. Also in and around Newport Beach, right, Carrie? Because that was just on like the peripheral.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe they searched at the youth center, which was a community center where, all the kids in the neighborhood hung out. I believe they talked about searching the reservoir. They may have been referring to what we called the gully. The gully was kind of a dip. If you go from one side of Corona del Mar to the other, to where Linda lived, there was a gully that you had to go through. And so I believe they searched there.
Yep. Yes. And so ultimately, a group of people who were looking for frogs in the back bay around Newport Beach, they come across her body at 10 a.m. on July 7th, which is Saturday, the very next day. And so Linda is found. If you go down, touching back on the handmade clothes, if you go down, Albert, yeah. So Linda is found in this dress on the right-hand side, if you're watching. That was a dress that her mother made for her, as well as the book bag, which is on the left-hand side. So both of those were handmade by her mother. And so Linda is found strangled to death in the back bay in Newport Beach. There is DNA recovered from Linda's body, and they do hold on to the DNA. Now, Janine, who we spoke of earlier, Jandy, she and her mom give an eyewitness account of the suspect that they saw with the blue van, because they come forward now knowing that Linda is missing. And so if you go down, there should be a sketch, a sketch of who they saw with the van. So there on the right-hand side is the full description and of the special bulletin, and then on the left, I've sort of blown up their description of what he looked like.
And the mother remembered, as you say, she took real note of what he looked like.
What's so interesting is she took real note, and this looks very much like the man.
Wow.
So they didn't get the license plate, but they got a very close description of what he looks like. And so they search and search, but the case does go cold, right, Carrie?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. they interview some people. If you go down, I have a couple of newspaper articles about the incident and about her being missing. So there's the LA Times. There's also, if you go down, there's a report from the Daily Pilot, which was actually owned by the LA Times. And these are all articles in 1973, I believe. I have 1978 there, but 1973. So then in 2018, if you go down, the Newport Beach Police Department decides to use social media to garner up some sort of new attention on this cold case on the 45th anniversary of when it happened. So July 6, 2018.
Wow.
And they start a story called #LindaStory on social. And they start to tell what happened from the perspective of Linda. And so they show never before seen photos. They talk about the case. And this does sort of re-energize interest and conversation about this cold case that now has been cold for 45 years. And they start to run the DNA. And so when they run the DNA, they apply it to CODIS, but they still have no match in CODIS, which is the national database for any felons or anyone who's given DNA to the police departments. But there is no match. So if you go down, when they run the DNA, they actually run it to have a better understanding of the makeup of the DNA, and they do a possible representation of what the suspect looks like. So if you go down, you'll see what the computer formulated as sort of, if you go down one more, as sort of who the suspect looked like.
Meaning what he'd look like now?
What do you look like in 1973, which is on the left-hand side, and then what he would look like now for age progression. So they also run the DNA on genealogy sites, and there is a match. And in fact, the suspect whose DNA matches the DNA that was left on Linda O'Keefe is on one of these ancestry websites. And so they go to where he is, which is Colorado, and they take a discarded object that has his DNA on it, and they run it, and it is in fact an exact match for the DNA on Linda O'Keefe. And if you go down, this is the man, James Allen Neal. He looks very similar to the drawing, the sketch, and he looks very similar in some ways to the computer created imagery of based on his genes, his DNA. So he is arrested in 2019, and he is taken to jail. He does not admit to the murders. And so he is put in jail. I think he's extradited to California, but he dies in prison before he ever sees a courtroom. And he dies in July of 2020. It is said that he didn't die of COVID, that he died of natural causes, but he never, in fact, is,
I mean, he's not very old. I'd be surprised if
he's 73, I think.
Maybe that's old enough too. But natural. He looks a little like Mark. Who said that? That's not very cool. Puccio, please.
If you go down, there's a picture of him as he's arrested, as he's in custody. So this is obviously an age progression of the other two photos of when he's taken into custody. He had been he did a horrible, tragic, awful thing, but he had been doing that his whole life. And if they had caught him in 1973 when Linda was murdered, he wouldn't have gone on to do several other sexual assaults and other things that he did to young girls.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was a criminal from when he was a young boy. Yeah. He changed his name several times, but the only name that I have for him is James Allen Neal, but that is not his birth name. Yeah. He moved states after the crime. Didn't he leave California fairly quickly, Carrie? And I think he went to Florida, of course.
He went to Florida, and then I believe also Colorado.
Yeah. So
that's a shot of him, I think, in
this is him.
In the interrogation room.
Interrogation room. They left a photo of Linda and left the room to see what he would do. And he doesn't admit to it. He says things like, "Sorry, baby girl, it wasn't me, but I'm sorry what happened to you." But I think there was a sense at the time of
He knows he's being watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
He's performing at that point. Yeah.
With the DNA, there was
I mean,
no.
How did your DNA get in
yeah,
on this girl,
exception.
pal? You know, it's so ugly. Another monster. But it's the good news. I mean, if there is, and it's so tragic, but that they could somehow revive it that way, then the 45th anniversary, and then somehow generate the interest.
They take the DNA, they match it. And then I heard some reports that he put his DNA up on this site, which means that he did not think that he left DNA, or he did not think that it was going to be traceable. Did you continue to follow this story, Carrie?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my whole life.
Yeah. Wow. It's just.
When you were living there where she was abducted, you were then, I know you weren't part of the search team, you know, you're probably a little young for that anyway at that time, but I'm wondering, do you remember the community sort of gripped by this story and questions as to what happened?
I remember the story, and Mark, I had to ask my mom about that because, you know, I wondered the same thing. Did everybody go on lockdown? And she really doesn't remember that. But, you know, this community was so safe. And I mean, this was a neighborhood where, you know, kids, you know, we stayed out till the streetlights came on. And so I don't remember, and my mom didn't remember any, you know, type of community scare where all of a sudden parents were keeping their kids in or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a...
it was said that kids on bikes were, in fact, out looking for Linda. But I had the same question with Carrie, which was, what was the immediate reaction of parents? I mean, of course, now it's changed so much.
Absolutely.
How we drop kids off at school and how we monitor them at school. So...
what a fascinating
story.
45 years later.
45 years later. Yep.
Well, this is really cool of you to come spend a few minutes with us on this, especially since you lived it. And there is the headstone, right? That's
that was the headstone. That's her also. I mean, imagine too being part of his family, and suddenly your dad or your grandfather is arrested for the rape and murder of a young girl from 1973, among other crimes, right, that he was arrested for in the state of California. But I mean, it just must have been just absolutely.
What we really hope with, you know, the advances in DNA and especially familial DNA is, you know, it's got to be a deterrent for, you know, some of these people. You know, obviously not everybody is going to be deterred. But I get a little bit of joy thinking that, you know, there are a lot of people out there that are just waiting for that knock at the door, you know?
Right. That's exactly right. Things have changed. I think that's a great way to put it.
It's a great way to put it. And Cindy actually, Linda's older sister, said her mother never forgave herself, right, Carrie? I mean, there was real guilt, I think, that as I know it from the retelling of the story, that haunted her mother, and even Cindy in some ways, because Cindy also was of driving age and did not go and pick up Linda.
I mean, any parent would, but you know, there's no way that, you know, that area, that small community and everything. I mean, you know, there was no crime. There was no fear of, you know, kids being out. And so, I mean, you know, it's tragic that it happened. But yeah, I mean, I've heard and I've read that too, that, you know, they, of course, have carried that for all these years. But, you know, we all ran loose. We were all walking home from school. All the kids did. You know?
And I mention it only because Cindy was the only living family member when this all happened. So, but thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us.
And,
it was really,
it was great meeting you.
Really
and I want to say thank you to Kim as well and the
Kim.
team.
Yeah, great to have everything coordinated,
Kim.
so it worked out.
And Albert, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm interested in this whole ancestry DNA thing because we've seen this break other cases too, like the North Bay rapist and other cases where sometimes it's not the suspect that puts their DNA up, it's a family member. And there's a new breed of criminologists that are, ancestry DNA trackers, and they can go on and figure out, okay, this person has, some of this similar DNA. So it could be an uncle, it could be a cousin, it could be, so it's, you don't know if anyone in your family is going to do this. So I think it's amazing how many cases are affected by it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're so right. Yep.
Well, I thank you for being here, everyone. I'm glad we convened this the way we did.
Yes.
And I'm glad the story had closure, although, always when there's a loss like this, it's so difficult. But Carrie, the best to your folks. And,
yes.
They're big supporters, and we really appreciate it. And,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And we look forward to the next time. Carrie Wilson and
Carrie.
Courtney.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for
having me. Hi,
yeah.
Kim.
Hi.
It's been so long. I'm so glad to hear that you're doing better.
I'm so sorry you have COVID, my friend.
I know. I mean, you think you go to Vegas and you shove yourself in these busy shows with tons of people and no air, and then you wonder why you're sick.
Well, it's pretty much a textbook exposure, I thought.
Oh, man. Very much. I mean, if you were looking for the non-vaxxers, they were all in the same room. Of
course they were.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope you feel better.
But thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate you being here. Thank you, Courtney. And that is True Crime Corner for today.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. Wow.
Well, that was a fun show.
It was, and I want to update because I think it's going to become quite interesting the rest of the week. The Dow is off 1,100 points and change today. That's a big drop. It's about almost 3%. And the other story within the story, I mean, there's a story about jobless report, and there's a story about NVIDIA, which is, the hugely popular company. And they say that their AI chips are going to be delayed. I mean, essentially, they told Microsoft, this is NVIDIA, okay, so this is the story within the story a little bit. They said there's going to be a delay in their chip, and they feel as though that might have led to a dumping of NVIDIA a little bit. So there are, again, stories within the story. Mm-hmm. But the Dow Jones sold off, 1.5% on Friday? And the S&P lost almost 2% on Friday, and now another 3%. And that's not nothing,
The Dow, they say, had its worst day in almost 2 years today.
Yeah. So this is a concern over, they always, after the fact, give you the thinking, but this is a concern over the health of the U.S. economy.
At the closing bell, here's how the numbers looked. Dow lost 1,033 points to 38,703. S&P 500 fell by 160 points to 5186, and the NASDAQ dropped by 576 points to 16,200.
Yeah. That's the story. The sky is falling. The word is semiconductor. Yes, thank you, Cassandra. And this... Viewfinder's president says, thanks to Mark, Kim, everyone else for not letting a little Rona 19 stop this important program. Yeah, I feel like my voice is just about collapsing. Yeah. So probably wrap up. Too bad I've got a big voiceover audition today, but I don't think I'll be able to do it.
Have a little tea. You'll be all right.
We'll see. Let's hope. But anyway, that's a little bit of what's going on in the market.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I do want to say we've covered a lot today. Most of the political stuff, you're just joining us, is in the first hour. But there'll be way more tomorrow. David K. Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, will help us drill down on Donald Trump. If you missed it, on Friday, I told you the story of Donald Trump and essentially a $10 million bag of cash delivered from Egypt that it is suggested affected Egyptian policy, but that's only the beginning. I'll let David K. Johnston tell you more. That story tomorrow. Meantime, I would guess by tomorrow we'll have some word on what Kamala Harris is doing with her number 2 on the ticket. And there is instability in the domestic markets, and there's certainly instability in the Middle East, and that may affect that as well. So there's a lot going on. Oh, you know what we need to do? The After Party Live.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim's going over to the After Party Live channel. Go meet her there until tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for 40K. We're going to keep it going. Yeah, till tomorrow. Bye-bye.